Road Dogg, I mean, many people talk about Road Dogg and they say, oh, he only had like a certain move set, but I'm sure he could do more, Matt. I think that was just part of his character.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain moves that he does that gets a big reaction out of the crowd, so, you know, they expect you to do it and they want to see it, so you have to, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, X-Pac was a man of many moves as well. I think he does a good job of showcasing them, but even he has a set list of moves that he would use in every match. I.e., like was it last King of the Ring was the first time we saw the Bronco Buster, was it?
But the thing is, what people don't realise when they look back at that and they go, oh, well, he only done this, and the reason you remember it is because they were so over. I mean, they wouldn't have kept doing it if they weren't over, those moves. And so, you know, today I know that there are few guys that have those move sets, but tell me what few guys actually have those moves as over that people really want to keep seeing all the time. It's very rare. I mean, so if you can do that and not break your back doing it, then you're going to do that more often than not on the road, just for your longevity, basically. I think it was Hulk Hogan that once said that, which doesn't surprise you, obviously, from a guy like Hogan with his move sets.
No.
Was you a fan of the what do you call it? The X Factor, was it? They used to
the X Factor, yeah, it was a good move at the time. Yeah, I think it suited him better, because what was he doing before that? A moonsault, wasn't it?
Something like that, yeah. The one.
The moonsault became kind of more mainstream, so it wasn't as amazing to see anymore. But I think the X Factor looked more high impact.
So Matt, your sum up of that one then?
Yeah, pretty decent. Nothing special, but you know, I think it was good. I mean, especially X-Pac getting the win. I mean, I like that kind of surprise to the end.
As we see, there's no break up in DX. They are hugging at least. Now, meaning that it will be an X-Pac Billy Gunn finals. And again, I will say this: at this point, I would have been looking at X-Pac as the guy, just because the way they sold them injury and the fact he's through. But I know, you know, it did go a different way. But I mean, at the time, I would have definitely looked at X-Pac as being the guy right then, because he come with so much buzz in '98. That's definitely my feelings behind it. Now, Matt, next match we got coming up as we're watching the video packages going on here. We got Rock and Undertaker, Matt, which on paper you say, well, that's two of the most best performers of all times, isn't it? On paper.
Yeah. So I would be expecting big things from this. You know, I mean, this kind of version of the Undertaker, though, I don't think he was ever like my favourite kind. I think story-wise he was great, but I'm not sure I was a huge fan of his wrestling, because I think he did a lot of like hiding behind people, and you know, the ministry came along and all that. And I think for me he felt a little bit weaker than in many of his other incarnations at this point. Yeah,
very very story-driven as well. So, like I said, I was wondering if this was the corporate or the corporate ministry. This was a corporate ministry, Matt, the incarnation. Then because obviously seeing Vince and Paul Bearer and Taker stand that, so it was like, I remember there was a big rivalry inside between Undertaker and Triple H as who was the guy, kind of leading as such. And this would be the transformation, Matt, to The Rock being one of the most popular fan favourite sort of go-to guy, and you know, big. Of course, now we know him. He's one of the biggest names in movies as well. But this would be the start of all that and getting him over. And he was very much endorsed by the fans now, from coming in from such a terrible reaction at the time. And by the way, it was Super Soaker, that balloon. Yeah. Super Soaker.
This time on the Rock, though, it's probably the most successful planned transition they've ever had. I mean, Austin, that wasn't really planned, so you can't really give WWE the credit for that. But The Rock, they masterminded this, that everyone would one day like be really behind The Rock. So I think this is like the time it all came together.
Yeah.
I don't think they've ever planned someone to come out on top and actually have it turn out so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, as a company, you try and pinpoint the guy, and obviously when he first debuted, Matt, they obviously did pinpoint him because the way they debuted him and everything else. But it was a classic example of you can't just expect people to just be over just because you love them, no matter what you give them. It doesn't matter if you make them, the triple-time heavyweight champion. It's just not. It just doesn't do it. It has to be some sort of. They have to see some sort of progress, some sort of emotion to the guy. So by this time, it was cool to like The Rock, for sure, and he was a bit more edgy. He wasn't the clean face Rocky Maivia, the smiley guy all the time. He was now the cool guy, someone that the fans did want to cheer, but he still had that attitude. He wasn't, total, babyface. He still had that sort of brash, arrogance, sort of swagger to himself. So that's what they're looking at now when you see he's looking at the reactions he was getting then when he was in the ring.
I'm surprised. Like, there is a lot of signs, but I was expecting like some huge amounts of Rock signs all over the ring. I'm guessing if they're there or they're not focusing in on them.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's just he after WrestleMania 15 he didn't just become babyface. It did take a while after. So this is definitely a time where it was just. Nowadays when babyface and heels change, it just happens overnight. They just turn up on the next night and you just accept them. Okay, then we got to cheer them or we got to hate them. But back then they did do a better job of that. Transition was slower and it wasn't just like you have to do that. It was like take it or leave it. So it was very much The Rock was still his same character. It wasn't like he completely changed himself, which was such a smart move. Something they should really try and get behind now. Now, this incarnation of The Undertaker, mate, you said it wasn't one of your favourites in terms of the wrestling side, but as a heel Undertaker, this was a completely different thing. I look at this Undertaker almost completely separate to all these other incarnations because he was very mean. He looked very evil the way he done his goatee and stuff like that. He's just very, very different at this point. Of course, being the WWF champion as well again, just much more. It took him to a new thing, like something we hadn't seen that side of the Undertaker before, as this heel, which I'm guessing. Other than when he first came in, this was his next stint as a heel, Matt.
Yeah, I'm looking at it with different perspective now because I'm looking back on it thinking, compared to all the other ones, he was not one of my favourite ones. But at the time, it was an amazing kind of gimmick that he was putting up here, and it did do. It was serving the purpose that it was supposed to. He was hated, and he was quite, intimidating, I guess. When he actually got around into his matches, but also I think it was a huge impact. The music was so different, it was not the kind of march anymore, and it was just some of this rock kind of spooky stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, Paul Bearer back in his corner, we'll add as well. Seems like it's been a bit of a theme on this retrospective as well so far. What is that? Is that Mike Chioda in the ring there, still around to this day?
Yeah, long old career he's had.
Yeah, well, he's been around since the time they were wearing bow ties. Yeah, so shows you the longevity he's had in the business. Don't fancy his chances just there either.
No, I think this is another example of the things that I wasn't too into about Undertaker. It was there was always something like a crutch to rely on, there was a back way out of the match or a cheap shot or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very early stuff. This whole show, Matt, it does. I will say one thing about it, that the articles, the columns I'd read, when everybody slated this, they said it had Vince Russo's touch all over the show, and they seem to put a lot of blame on the reason that there was all these sort of referees getting knocked out and weapons and storylines. It was very much Vince Russo was sold all over this, but I would have to somewhat agree with that. I don't want to see that every single match. But the one thing I will say that is positive about it is the tournament itself came back to light, at least, that they focused in on that as a big deal again, I guess. But now this wouldn't be the first time we've seen the WWF title either, Matt, defended before the main event. In fact, in the first two, I believe Yokozuna and Hogan went out like halfway on one year. So that was also another theme of these King of the Rings.
That was I think that was the last time we saw Hogan as well, wasn't it? Like,
yes, yeah, it would have been the.
It's it after that.
Yeah. The Undertaker, and again, his attire kind of changed as well. Like he had that kind of the singlet tank top type thing going on as well. So you see all these arms with the tattoos up the sides. Just like a completely different incarnation of himself.
It definitely feels like all the supernatural elements of him have been zapped out of him. You know, like Kane has taken him, and Kane is now the one, because he looks like these kind of things like The Rock's doing to him now. Like when he hit him the rock bottom and everything, and then like Paul Bearer had to pull the referee out. Like, you would have thought like a couple of years back, Undertaker would have just kicked out of that no props.
When I watched the Undertaker does not do many interviews, as probably people realise, but some of the interviews he did do, he spoke about this era and this time zone of his character, and one thing he said is that he felt at the time he was getting lost in the shuffle, and he said, I had to come up with something different and something edgier, because otherwise I was going to get lost in this Attitude Era. And he just said that the Undertaker character just wouldn't have worked in the Attitude Era itself, just because it was so edgy and sort of going a completely different way, that he had to reinvent something. So, you know, he's almost like, I always describe the Undertaker as the Madonna of wrestling. He's always been very good at reinventing himself and knowing what's the next best thing type thing for his persona. He's done that all his career, the Undertaker, and that's what's probably made him such, you know, the consistent performer that he's been over the years to this very day, perhaps.
I think the most shocking reincarnation I saw of him, probably slightly just behind the biker one, was Mohawk Undertaker.
Sorry, what was that?
I think the most shocking reinvention I've ever seen of him, just behind biker Undertaker, was Mohawk Undertaker.
Oh, yeah, when he came out that year. Was that like, that's when he faced Triple H the second time, yeah? That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
I was shocked with that here, dude. I was like, what happened?
Yeah, and they've done such a good job at keeping it a secret. Like, how many things are a secret these days? But it shows how good the Undertaker is at protecting everything. He really doesn't like coming out on interviews to talk smack or anything. But, you know, and then he turns up, he had that whole cloak thing on. And it was only until he was in the ring everyone was like, oh my god! Holy shit, like they blew up everywhere. Like, everyone was talking about it. It's just very rare these days that you don't spot someone through an airport or something like that, you know?
Yeah, that was a shock. And that whole biker image as well, that was so vastly different from anything he actually did other than that. Because it was almost like he was a completely different character when that came about.
Yeah, you know, I had some emails actually very recently, and I didn't bring them up on our podcast because they didn't really fit the theme, but I did reply to them, and I had some Undertaker fans, and we exchanged emails a few times, and they were like a big Undertaker fan basically, but they said, you know, they really hated the biker thing, and they asked, you know, why did he do it, what was the point, etc. But the one thing I will say about it is, I know that the Undertaker himself enjoyed playing the biker role just because it was something completely different, and he felt like he could adapt his wrestling game a lot more. Like, that is a time where he started to, we all know, for people that know the Undertaker, know that he was a big MMA fan, and he started to incorporate